And we're back. Huh? Did I do that right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. We did it right. We're COMP392. That's advanced graphics here at Centennial College, and it's week 1, lesson 1, part 3 of the broadcast. So the last two broadcasts we did, the recordings we did, and the last day we got together, we kind of talked about course norms, you know, when to come in, when not to come in. That we're going to make a little bit of change that I was supposed to put up today. I'm going to probably put up later on or by the end of the week. I'm running a little bit behind. But what we're going to be doing today is talking about TypeScript a little bit more, because that's going to be the language we're going to use to help us build applications with Three.js, right? It's like JavaScript. It'll run JavaScript, but it helps us, it gives us code highlighting and code hinting in order for us to do you know, larger applications and more robust applications. We're going to be using, like I said before, the Visual Studio Code editor that's open source and cross-platform. It'll work across Linux, Mac, and Windows, right? So that way it gives us an opportunity to work in any mode you want. But again, there's going to be some people that can't run it because the configuration for Windows is a little bit more tricky to run a transpiler, right? And in order for us to transpile, like I said before, we'll just do a little bit of a demo here. Is I'm going to pull up the terminal here, right? And again, this would be command prompt for you Windows people, right? And let's say an example of we've already loaded a couple things last day, and I'm going to pull up that PowerPoint presentation, and you can certainly follow along if you go up on eCentennial. You see the PowerPoint presentation up there, right? And I recommend you do that in PDF format. So we covered a couple things. We talked about kind of the requirements. That's what we kind of covered last day. And we talked about how to get the source code a little bit, not too much. I showed you the boilerplate, but we didn't go into it. And I told you we're going to build this next day, the boilerplate, how to make, you know, kind of our Three.js boilerplate, a living document that we're going to evolve, right? And what is a boilerplate anyway, right? It's just a template that we're going to use so that way we start from somewhere instead of nowhere. Because if we're going to start from scratch every time, it takes a long time to you know, to kick it off, right? So a boilerplate's a little easier. And then today we're going to talk about the rest of this stuff, how to resize stuff and everything else. This is what we're going to cover this day. So rendering and viewing a 3D object, all that stuff. We're going to use a little bit of code, and there's some code examples that like I said, I put up on GitHub. And for those people who don't know, there is a lab that's due Friday. It's sign up for GitHub. It's worth 1% of your final grade. It'll end on Friday. So if you don't do it by Friday, it's not going to be available after that. And all I'm requiring for you to do is sign up for GitHub, create a repo. If you already have a GitHub account, just point me to a repo that you already have and include it in a text file in your Dropbox up on eCentennial. And if I can get that from you, you get your mark. It's a kind of a pass-fail thing. Either you have it or you don't, right? So you give me the right information or you don't. If you just give me github.com, you get 0, right? Because that's not what I'm asking for. I want github.com / your account name, whatever it is, / and probably something like whatever your repo is called, example repo 1 or whatever you want to make it called. It's up to you. To prove to me that you've kind of created a repo, you know where GitHub is and all that stuff. Okay, and again, GitHub, for those people who were away last day, if you've had me before, you've got this thing, all right? This is a free mark for you, right? For a majority of you who've had me before, it's 1% free, no work to be done. Just basically go up there, create a repo, and put it up on in Dropbox there. But so for me, again, I have several, and the one we're working with where you're going to see all my example files is here on github.com / Centennial College. Okay, so that's where I have all my parts. And if you notice, I have part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of COMP392. That's for today, right? These are all the things we're going to be covering very quickly. I've updated them, so they're up and running. And we also have that Three.js boilerplate that I looked at last day, right? And there's other ones in there that don't really apply to you. There's a couple ways you can get these things, right? The one way is to actually click on the lesson, the part, and then fork it. And if you fork it, if you have a GitHub account, it'll just appear in your GitHub account, right? And you can download it from there if you're going to modify the actual file. You can also just download the zip file here, right, in GitHub. That's another way. And you can also click this button to clone this repository on your desktop, right? Those are the 3 options you have. And there's others, actually. You can use curl. There's a bunch of other options, command line options to get the stuff cloned, git clone, and so on. But you know, this is, I'm going to share everything with you up on GitHub. And so GitHub is going to be our communication device. It's the way we're going to be. I'm going to share code with you. And I'm also going to look at your code on GitHub. And I won't accept your code just on Dropbox. I want to see your code on GitHub every single time, right? So if I get your, you know, if you send me your stuff on Dropbox, Dropbox is a backup for me. If you don't give it to me on GitHub, I don't know. I may not accept it this round. So I want everything on GitHub. Okay, and the reason for that is it does a couple things. It shows me that you're using the tool. We use GitHub as a collaboration, and we use it as a backup. We use it as version control, a version control system, so that way we can compare one version of our code to the next. It helps us go forward and back in terms of making mistakes. I mean, how many people, and I've asked this question before for people who've had me, so forgive me, I'm gonna ask it again, but how many people have been coding, right? You're coding, and it worked, and then all of a sudden, now you don't know what you did, and it doesn't work, right? Put your hand up. Who's ever done that? Who's ever got? Yeah, we all do it, right? I do it a lot. I sit there and go, God damn it, you know, and I want to smash the computer, right? But instead of smashing the computer, don't smash the computer. Go up on GitHub and revert, right? That's all it comes down to, right? Don't point and don't tap your screen. Tapping your screen is not going to do anything. It's just like, you know, unless you get a touch screen these days, right? Don't smash your computer. Go up on GitHub and revert back to your previous version of your code. And that's why we use GitHub. We use GitHub for collaboration and communication. We use GitHub for, by the way, FYI and hint, hint, why do we use GitHub is going to be a question I might ask you on next week's quiz. Because remember, we talked about it last day that every week I'll be giving you a quiz in class, right? 5 to 10 questions, whatever it's going to be, 5 minutes of every morning on the on probably day 1, might be day 2 some weeks, depending on how it goes, right? And then it won't be, this quiz will not be available to you remotely. It'll be only available to you if you're in class, okay? Because I'll be passwording it. You'll get it 5 minutes, and then everything else is done. Okay, so what are the 3 reasons for GitHub, right? Like I talked about, collaboration, right, and communication. The other one would be a backup, and the third one would be version control, right? Actually version, you know, to kind of look at it and go, all right, I have my version 1, version 2, you know, I can go back to the previous version, and there's many other reasons, but those are the primary 3 reasons we're going to use it, okay? GitHub, please get it, and it's your lab is due Friday, right? Nice and easy, 1%. Can't go wrong with that one. Okay, so that's where I'm going to be sharing my stuff with you. And last day, what we did was we created a kind of an example file here. So let's do that again. So bring up, you know, your desktop somewhere, and I'm just going to create an example file in the background. So I'm going to say new folder somewhere in the background. This is, by the way, this is a do thing, so do it with me. Right? Don't just watch me, because this, you know, you have to get practice on doing this over and over again to get good. So please fire up your computers. Some people, from a configuration perspective, they have an old machine, they don't have their own machine, and they want to use TeamViewer. And someone asks, can I use TeamViewer to control machine at home? Absolutely. I don't care how I get your work. You don't have to have a physical laptop here. You don't have to use the machine in front of you. You could use a machine that's remote. I don't care, right? As long as it works properly. So I've created an untitled or empty folder here. I'm going to retitle this thing as example. Let's just do this example one more time. So here's example. It's my example TypeScript file, right? And remember how Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code works. Let's call it VS Code from now on, right? So VS Code, right? If I want to, when I fire it up, it kind of comes up with the last project I was working on. This is the last project I was working on, right? But I have this new folder. I'm going to drag this folder into the right side pane here. And when I do that, it gives me an empty folder structure right here, right? All right, so here's my example project, right? My example project. And I want to create some folders for my structure. I want to structure my project right from the get-go. So I'm going to create a couple of folders, even if I'm not going to use them. And I want you to do this by habit, so that way you get good at doing this stuff. So 2 folders that I'm always going to create are scripts. So new folder, scripts. And again, you can right-click here in the left pane and go new folder, right? Or you can hover over your project name and then click the new folder icon, right? The new folder icon. Those are the 2 ways you can do it. So scripts, and the other one I'm going to make usually is content. So new folder, and I'm going to create a folder called content. I do this for 2 reasons. 1, because if you make these 2 folders, scripts and content, it's the same folders that Microsoft Visual Studio 2015, 2013 is going to make, right? So if you can't use Visual Studio Code and you want to move to Visual Studio 2015 or 2013, well, that's okay. Those are the same folders. The same folder structure is what I'm going to mimic here, right? That's why I do it. In my content, I'm going to put in my content, I'm going to have my CSS files. All my CSS, instead of calling it CSS, it's just called content, all right? So I'm going to right-click here, and I'm going to add a new file. We're going to make an empty CSS file here called app.css, okay? And it's going to be empty. This is just, we're going to make a little comment here that says, app.css, kind of like custom style sheet or something like that. It's just a comment that just basically identifies what it is, right? So that's our app.css, and that app.css is inside of my content folder, right? That's all it is. It's just structure. We're making a structure. Here's another one. In my scripts folder, I'm going to right-click and go new file, and this is where I'm going to have I'm going to call it my app or game.ts file. Remember, we're using TypeScript as a superset of JavaScript here. So if I put my app or game.ts, I'm going to call, in this particular case, I'm going to call it app because we've called the other one app.ts, right? This is a TypeScript file. So the TS extension identifies my file as a TypeScript file. That's the type, right? Not a JavaScript file. It's going to transpile. It's going to convert into JavaScript from TypeScript after we transpile it or transcompile it. That's what it is, right? Okay, so this is my app. Let's just make a simple console.log. Oh, not a cert. Console.log that says, app started. Okay, there we are. So just console.log. And I want to put that console.log somehow in a function, like an init function. So I'm going to call function init, right, as an example. And the function is going to return void. It's not going to return anything. And we're going to take this console log and we're going to cut it and paste it and put it inside our function. Okay. It's just a starter file. That's all we're doing, right? We're testing this stuff out to make sure that you have connectivity so you can do what I'm asking you to do. When we get rolling, and I've given you some files already to look at, right? In order for us to get rolling, you need to do some of the steps that I'm doing here. And we'll try to do them in both VS Code and Visual Studio. All right, so app started, right? That's our app.ts file. Now, I can't do anything with that file because TS is not recognized by the browser. We need to transpile it, right? Or transcompile is really what we're doing. And remember, for people who weren't here last day, in order for it to goods on what TypeScript's all about, you have to go to typescriptlang.org. And we did a little bit of, we were in the playground last day, right here, and we made a little class that converts from TypeScript into JavaScript, right? That's what we were doing last day. Made the person class. Actually, it retained what I did last day. Here's what we did last day. So this is the person class. And when it converts to JavaScript, right, it looks like this. So here's, TypeScript, nice. We understand, we can actually look at it visually and understand what it does. And here's JavaScript. JavaScript is like a little uglier, right? And that's what I'm saying. Why would we use JavaScript if we can use TypeScript? It is a superset of JavaScript, and it gives you superpowers, right? It allows you to make larger scale applications a lot easier, okay? So TypeScript, JavaScript. And so this is the kind of stuff we want to do here in the browser. But we want to do here in our development environment, right? So again, I will go back. This right now, even though it looks like pure JavaScript, I want to convert it to TypeScript. And the way I do that is to transpile it. There's a bit of setup in VS Code to do this, and I'm going to show you this again today. And I'm also going to show you Visual Studio, and it's a little easier, but when it comes to Node and other applications, the whole package management system is totally different in Visual Studio, and you can do either way, and it's fine with me. Okay, so how do we do this? One thing is we need to include a tsconfig file when we use TypeScript. So I'm going to right-click, right, and I'm going to make a new file here, and we're going to call a tsconfig.json file. We're going to make this new file in VS Code, right? And we have to define our compiler options, right? It's just a configuration file. Some of you may be familiar with this if you've taken any kind of mean stack. If you've taken COMP392 as an example, which is kind of emerging technologies, they also detail the mean stack a little bit more carefully, and so on. Then you'd be working on the command line with something like a Visual Studio Code or brackets or something else, right? If you've never done any kind of command line stuff, it'll be new to you, but it's okay because I'm just going to introduce you to a new technology. All right, so I've just name this thing tsconfig.json. You have to do that. This is required, tsconfig.json, right? And by the way, this is not the first and last time I'm going to tell you this. We're going to do this a lot of times before we're comfortable making our own boilerplate, right? Okay, so I need to kind of, create an empty object, and I'm going to press Control Space here in Visual Studio Code, right? It's going to give me some options, right? I want to pick the last one, compiler options. That's what I want to choose. So now I have a file that looks like this. Right? All I did was open up the braces here, right? Okay, next option, the first option I need to put in is the target. So what am I converting to? So if I go target, I want to choose ES5. That's ECMAScript 5, or some people like to call it JavaScript 5, right? It's the older version of JavaScript. I'm converting back because even though right now JavaScript, like I talked to you about last day, is in ECMAScript 6, we just came out with it in 2015, not all browsers support this. So because not all browsers support ECMAScript 6, we convert back to ECMAScript 5. Okay, that's the first thing. Next is the module, what we're going to choose, right? We're going to choose module, and we're going to choose CommonJS. All right, we're going to accept the defaults here. And the last option is map. If I put map in there and I go to source map, I want to turn source maps on, so true. And the reason why I want to turn source maps on is it gives us better code hinting and troubleshooting in the browser. So it allow us to do debugging and so on in the browser for TypeScript, right? So that means when you transpile, your one TypeScript file becomes 3 files. It becomes a JS file, JavaScript, and a map file, right? Which, by the way, all modern browsers are looking for nowadays, right? So those 3 things, JavaScript, the TypeScript, and the map file. That's what you get when you transpile. Okay, cool. So I've got this tsconfig.json file. That's the first piece I need. I can't do, my TypeScript without it. Okay, that's one. Next piece, I need to transpile, try and transpile for the very first time, right? On the Mac, right, it's Command-Shift-B. On the Windows machines, most of you have Windows machines, it's Control-Shift-B. Okay, so if I do that, Command-Shift-B or Control-Shift-B, it's going to bring up this little taskbar, right? I'll wait for everyone to catch up with me. So Control-Shift-B on the Windows machines, Command-Shift-B on the Mac. I think Control-Shift-B on Linux machines too. So you pull up, it gives you this little task runner, right? And what the task runner does is every time I use that key sequence, Control-Shift-B, Command-Shift-B, whatever it's going to be for your machine, right? It'll it'll run that task to transcompile your JavaScript, all your JavaScript files into TypeScript. Okay, so let's do that. Let's configure this task runner. So the task runner has 2 panes. You don't need the second one. Let's just get rid of this one, right? I'm going to get rid of these comments in my task runner, right? I don't need them. I'm going to slim this file down a little bit. I'm going to get rid of all this stuff all the way to the bottom. And all you need, I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff. But notice the message it says, hey, in order for this to work for you in your Windows machine or Mac or Linux, you have to run this command, npm install -g TypeScript. If you don't have Node installed, that means as a dependency, you need to get Node installed like we did last day. You need to install TypeScript, and then you can make this work. If you don't have those 3 things, you won't. This transpiling won't work for you ever. All right. So please do this npm install -g TypeScript. Otherwise, you will not have this compilation process work. Okay. So we're going to get rid of this. We're just getting rid of all the comments because we don't care about them right now. Right. We're going to have some silent output because we don't care about that in our little example. And we're going to get rid of anything in the brackets in hello world, right? So we don't need hello world. The brackets will be 2 square brackets with nothing inside of it, and that's it. So that's what your task runner should look like for your for TypeScript. All right. So whenever you run TypeScript, the task runner is going to transpile all your TypeScript files into JavaScript files and create a map file. All right. And the way to do that is to basically press Control-Shift-B on the Windows machine or Command-Shift-B on the Mac. And I'll do that right now. So here's Command-Shift-B. Watch carefully what I got here. I've got my app.ts. Watch what happens when I press Command-Shift-B. So Command-Shift-B, right? And then all of a sudden, here's my JavaScript file and my map file. If you don't have this, we have some troubleshooting to do, right? because this is what the problem is for some of you. You won't be able to make this work. So please, if you don't have this working, I'm going to pause right now, and I'm going to go around and I'm going to ask Stephen, can you give me a hand with this? I want you to help me with getting people going with Windows. Who else knows this really well? Anybody else can give me a hand? I would appreciate it, because there's a lot of you in here, and it's going to take me a long time for me to get through. Who does not have it working? I bet you most of you don't. Yeah, and that's okay, because if you don't have it working, that means that you don't have npm installed. So remember, the requirements to make this work are, I need to have Node. So here's my Node.js. I need to have Node.js installed. So go to Node.js and install Node.js. That's number one, right? And then I need to install TypeScript. And if I go back to TypeScript, and if it says, you know, download, right? Look what it says here, npm I, which is install, -G for global TypeScript. You need to run this command. If you don't run this command after you install Node, you'll never have TypeScript. And if you don't have TypeScript, it won't transcompile. Okay, so those are the things. So I'm going to pause the video now, and I'm going to go around, and I'm going to help everybody get going, okay? So let's pause it now.